What would you do if the person who destroyed your mother's life was standing 6 feet away from you, holding an award that should have carried your mother's name? Not hers, your mother's. Clara Bennett had been living inside that question for 9 years. She had not expected this to be the morning it became a room she had to walk into. Whitmore University's auditorium held 240 seats. Clara knew the number because she had counted them one Tuesday in September, arriving 40 minutes before anyone else, with nothing to do with her hands but count. She chose the same chair every time. Back row, far right, directly beneath a fluorescent tube that had been flickering since the first week of classes and that no one had filed a maintenance request for. She liked that seat. Nobody looked at broken lights. The morning of the scholarship presentation, she wore her gray cardigan, the one with the loose thread at the left cuff she had been meaning to cut since October. The left arm of her glasses was taped at the hinge, a repair made sometime around 2 in the morning after 4 hours in the basement library. In her bag was her mother's notebook. Thin, many of its pages removed cleanly, as if whoever had taken them had known exactly which ones mattered. She pressed her thumb into the spine until the cardboard gave slightly at the corner. At the front of the room, behind the podium bearing the university crest, stood Dr. Margaret Holloway, 57 years old, tenured. The woman who had taken something irreplaceable from a graduate student named Eleanor Bennett 20 years ago and built a career on top of the wreckage. The scholarship banner read, "The Whitmore Excellence Award in Applied Mathematics." Holloway had established it 11 years ago. Eleanor Bennett had died 9 years ago. Stay with Clara, because what happens in the next 60 seconds is only the beginning of what she has been carrying. The presentation opened with 6 names on the projected screen. Department heads stood in sequence and read citations. Ethan Caldwell sat in the front row, 34 years old, CEO of Caldwell Systems, Whitmore's most prominent donor. His pen had not moved from the same angle since he sat down. Clara was not one of the 6 names. She had applied. The process had taken 11 days, 2 drafts, and 1 long phone call to financial aid about whether library work-study hours qualified as research experience. They had decided they did not. Holloway adjusted the microphone. Her gaze swept across the rows. It stopped on Clara. "Before we begin," she said, "I'd like to address an application that required clarification." She let the pause sit. "Clara Bennett, would you come forward, please?" Clara stood. The loose thread on her cuff caught the chair arm. She unhooked it. 4 seconds, she counted. At the podium, Holloway pulled Clara's application up on the projection, sidebar unseen until now, and deleted it. The keystroke was audible across the room. Then she turned to the honor board on the wall. Gold lettering going back 40 years. She held it out toward Clara. Clara's name was not on that board, but the gesture was its own language. "Stand here. Hold this. Let them watch." "Your mother," Holloway said, her voice not changing pitch once across 3 sentences. Clara could hear that she had said some version of this before. "Spent 2 semesters in this department under my supervision. Her name was removed from academic consideration in 2003 for conduct I would characterize charitably as unbecoming of a scholar." A pause. "You might call it a family pattern, an academic blemish, shall we say, one that appears to run in the family." Clara took the marker. She stood in front of the honor board and understood what was being asked. There was no name of hers to erase, but the gesture was the point. Make her stand here. Make her hold the marker. Let the room watch her hold it. Her hand began to tremble. She didn't stop it. The uncapped marker pressed into her fingers, and a thin, dark line ran down her knuckle and fell across the front of her skirt. Someone in the third row made a sound. Short, swallowed, the kind that needs one other person to join it before it becomes a laugh. A student 2 seats down opened her phone. The boy on the aisle did not even look up from his notebook, which was somehow worse. Holloway clicked the remote. An equation appeared on the projector. Nonlinear, dense. A 90-second countdown appeared beside it and began running. Since your application claims a methodology not sourced to any course offered at this institution, Holloway said, I am offering you 60 seconds to demonstrate that the work is genuinely your own. The room went quiet, the way rooms do when they have already decided the outcome. Clara looked at the equation. 12 seconds. The assumption in line 2 is incorrect from the start. Her voice did not waver. So this equation has no valid solution. The room held. Holloway's hand stopped over the podium. I beg your pardon? The problem assumes a closed boundary condition that does not apply to this class of system. Any solution derived from it is invalid. You cannot solve an equation built on a false premise. She set the marker back on the tray, placed it parallel to the edge. Holloway looked at her the way people look when they are deciding whether to change tactics. Clara did not move. At the front of the room, Ethan Caldwell set his pen down on the folder in front of him. He looked at Clara. Not the way people look at a disruption, the way people look at something they did not expect to find and are not yet sure what to do with. He did not look away. And if you think this was only the surface of what Clara was carrying into that room, stay with her. Because what she found alone at 2 a.m. changes everything you think you know about how this story began. A classroom on the 4th floor. A chair scraping back hard. A woman standing, both hands raised, palms open, as 2 faculty members moved toward her from the door. A piece of paper held up at the front of the room. The words, Academic Integrity Violation, Plagiarism, Effective Immediately. A name on the honor board in fresh gold lettering. There one morning and a gray smear of adhesive residue by the afternoon. The woman's voice, quiet enough that only the students in the front row heard it. That work is mine. The door closed. The basement of Whitmore's main library smelled like cold concrete and paper that had been somewhere humid for a long time. Clara sat at a desk in the far corner, a single lamp, her mother's notebook open in front of her, cracked at the spine from handling. Many of its pages simply gone. Removed so cleanly, the remaining edges showed no tearing, only the white line of a straight cut. Her glasses sat crooked on her face, the taped hinge resting against her temple. She had stopped noticing it somewhere around the 3rd week of October. She worked the closing shift at the circulation desk 4 nights a week, midnight to 2. After her shift ended, she came here instead of going back to the dormitory, because the dormitory cost money she did not have for a meal plan. She had learned that if you were quiet enough, the overnight security guard left the basement open until 3. She turned to page 43. Under UV light, the flashlight borrowed from the chemistry supply closet in October and not returned. Her mother's pen revealed a second layer. Eleanor Bennett had written in 2 inks. Standard black for the visible layer, a compound she had mixed herself for the hidden one. The visible layer was careful, contained, unremarkable. The kind of graduate notes a supervisor might flip through and find nothing worth pausing over. The hidden layer was something else entirely. A structural model. A complete mathematical architecture for predictive error correction in adaptive AI systems. 22 pages of derivation, fully sourced, with 4 worked examples that had never appeared in any published paper before or since. Eleanor had spent 18 months on this. The visible notes were the decoy. The hidden ones were what she had not trusted anyone to see. Clara had understood this in October. 3 weeks of searching had confirmed what happened next. Academic databases, patent registries, published appendices of every significant AI systems paper from 2004 to 2010. Her mother's model did not appear under Eleanor Bennett's name anywhere. It appeared under Holloway's, embedded, unsigned, threaded through the foundational logic of a paper Holloway had published in 2006, under 3 co-authors, none of them Eleanor Bennett. The paper that had launched Holloway's tenure, the paper that had made her the department's authority on computational mathematics for the next 2 decades. Eleanor Bennett had been dismissed in November 2003. Holloway's paper had been submitted in January 2004. Clara set down the UV flashlight. She sat in the dark of the basement with her hand flat on the notebook. The boiler behind the far wall made a low, steady sound. She thought about her mother's voice, not the voice from the classroom, not the one she'd reconstructed from other people's accounts, but the voice from Sunday mornings, saying her name from the other side of a closed bedroom door. Clara. Breakfast. Clara. She had been 12 when that voice stopped, old enough to understand the word gone, too young to understand what had been taken before that. She understood it now. She reached for her textbook, final exam in 11 days. She almost missed the sound at the end of the row. What those pages held was not just a mother's stolen work. It was the proof that every injustice done to Eleanor Bennett had left a record, buried, hidden, but still there. The question was whether anyone would ever be in a position to read it, and that answer was about to walk down a flight of stairs. Tall, a jacket too well made for the basement, laptop open, a printed document to the side. He stood at the far end of the row and looked at Clara with the patience of someone deciding whether the question was worth asking. "You are not supposed to be down here," Clara said. "Neither are you." His gaze moved to the UV flashlight on the desk beside her notebook. He did not ask about it directly. "I was told a work-study student in the mathematics library submitted a correction note to our development team 6 weeks ago, anonymously, about a structural error in our AI error correction system." He set his laptop bag down. It resolved a conflict that 7 engineers had been working on for 4 months. Clara closed the notebook. "I don't know what you're referring to." The correction described a false assumption in the original boundary condition of the model. He pulled the printed document out and set it on the desk between them, not pushing it toward her. It used notation I had not seen in any of our internal documentation. She looked at the document. She did not touch it. "The assumption your system was built on is wrong," she said. "Not the current version of the assumption, the original one, from the model your system was derived from. When someone adapted it for your architecture, they changed a parameter. Either they did not understand what that parameter was doing, or they needed the derivation to look different enough that the source would not be recognizable." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "How do you know what the original model looked like?" Clara looked at her bag. "There are things that get taken from people," she said, "and no one is told." She began gathering her materials. "My system logs the same failure point at the same timestamp every 8 months, he said. Our engineers cannot explain the regularity. It reads like the system is trying to compensate for something that has been removed from the original architecture." "It is," She stood. Whatever was removed, the system still knows the structure it was built from. It keeps trying to return to a configuration that no longer exists in its current form. She picked up her bag. Systems have memory, even when the source is gone. She walked toward the stairs. "My name is Ethan," he said. She stopped at the bottom step, did not turn around. "I know," she said. She kept walking. He stayed in the basement for 2 more hours, running searches she had not asked him to run, arriving, slowly, at a name he had not been looking for. Clara Bennett. Dissertation records, graduate enrollment papers, an administrative note filed under Academic Integrity Actions, dated November 2003, bearing Holloway's signature. One word in the disposition field. Dismissed. He sat with that word for a long time. Then he picked up his phone and called his data recovery team. "I need everything on Whitmore's server archive from 2001 through 2007, he said. "Every decommissioned backup they have. Tonight." What Ethan found on those servers would do more than expose one professor's past. It would rebuild something that had been broken for 20 years. But first, it was going to get much, much worse for Clara. Holloway found out about the basement meeting within 4 days. She did not confront. She filed. Clara's name appeared on the Academic Integrity Review list by Wednesday morning. Unauthorized collaboration with an external party holding financial interests in the university's scholarship decisions. The language was precise and airtight. The kind that has been drafted slowly over many years by someone who has done it before. By Thursday, a second report arrived. A copy of a take-home exam from Clara's section had been found missing from the department's secure drive. Time of disappearance: Tuesday evening. The exact hour Clara had been in the basement with no cell service and no one else present who could confirm it. A disciplinary hearing was scheduled for Monday. Clara read the notice, standing in the dormitory hallway in her coat, bag still on her shoulder, because the email alert had come through before she made it inside. She stood there. 3 minutes. She did not move. Then she went to class. Ethan found her on Friday in the third-floor stacks, between number theory and functional analysis. The overhead lighting there was worst in the building. She had been coming to this particular row since her second year because no one else did. He sat down across from her without announcement. "She is moving faster than I anticipated," he said. Clara looked at her hands. There was still ink under her left thumbnail from the scholarship morning. "She has been preparing something like this for a long time," Clara said. "I made it easier by giving her a visible reason." "I need to understand what you actually have," Ethan said. He placed a folder on the desk. Not a summary, everything. She looked at the folder, at the table between them. "My mother was Clara Bennett," she said. She said the rest in under 4 minutes. The UV layer in the notebook, the structural model on page 43, Holloway's 2006 paper, and the embedded derivation. The missing pages, removed cleanly before Clara had understood what she was looking at. The timestamp gap between her mother's dismissal in November 2003 and Holloway's submitted paper in January 2004. When she finished, Ethan opened the folder. Inside, printouts from Whitmore's archive, research logs dated 2002 and 2003. Clara Bennett's name embedded in the authorship metadata of the foundational documents in the sequence. 3 folders deep in a file that had not been accessed since it was created. "My team recovered this 2 days ago from the decommissioned server backup," he said. "There's more. They are still working through it." Clara looked at the papers. This establishes that she contributed to the research, she said. It does not prove the model was hers. What would? Clara was quiet. She looked at the wall of books beside her, spines she had read, some of them twice. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out the notebook. Page 43, she said. The hidden layer. It is the complete original derivation. Every component, every notation, every worked example. It predates Holloway's published version by at least 18 months. She opened it carefully, holding it steady. The parameter Holloway changed when she adapted the model. My mother's notes show what it was originally and what it was designed to do. That is why your system keeps failing. Holloway changed the parameter because she needed the derivation to look different. She did not understand that the parameter was load-bearing. Ethan looked at the page for a long time. If we can get the notebook verified alongside the server records, he said, the sequencing alone would be enough. The hearing is Monday, Clara said. Then we have a weekend. She closed the notebook and put it back in her bag. He gathered the folder. They left the third floor by separate staircases, 20 minutes apart. Clara carrying the logic and the missing pieces, Ethan carrying the means to turn them into something a room full of administrators could not dismiss. Neither of them said the word together. They did not need to. But having the evidence was one thing. Before any of it could reach the people who needed to see it, Holloway was going to force Clara into a room she could not simply walk out of. And this time, the entire department would be watching live. The disciplinary review was not a small room with a closed committee. Dr. Patricia Okafor, chair of the mathematics department, had been informed that the session required full procedural transparency and a venue suitable for faculty-level observation. She had approved the request through the standard channel. She understood what it meant only when she walked in and saw the projector, the recording device on the table, and the live stream feed open on screens in 4 separate buildings across campus. Every department head, every administrator with a title. And somewhere on the other end of those screens, students who had been told there was a formal integrity review being conducted. Attendance optional, but noted. Holloway read the violation citation from the paper in front of her, word for word. When she finished, she set the paper down and asked Clara to stand. You have claimed the methodology in your scholarship application is original work, she said. I am giving you the opportunity to demonstrate that claim, here, before this committee. The projector displayed the same equation from the scholarship presentation. Same nonlinear structure, same 90-second timer, the same false assumption buried in line 2, second time. Clara stood. She looked at the equation, at the live stream camera mounted in the corner, at the department secretary with a recording device open on the table in front of her. She walked to the whiteboard. The equation as written has no valid solution, she said, because the boundary condition assumed in line 2 does not hold for this class of system. She wrote the corrected assumption beside it, clean strokes, unhurried. Under a corrected assumption, the system becomes tractable. The approach is as follows. She worked through it step by step, each line written in full, each notation explained in the margin beside it. The way you document something when you know the person reading it has been told not to believe you. 7 minutes. The department secretary stopped typing at minute 4. Dr. Okafor, first row, second seat, put her pen down on the armrest beside her and did not pick it up again. Near the window, a student who had been scrolling on his laptop closed the screen and turned to face the board. Clara set down the marker. At the back of the room, Ethan Caldwell stood. I would like to note for the record, he said, his voice even, that the approach demonstrated on this board is structurally consistent with a mathematical model. My engineering team has been attempting to reconstruct for 8 months. We have been working from a derivative. What was written on that board is closer to the original architecture than anything my team has produced independently. He sat back down. 3 students near the window exchanged a look. 2 of them had been in the scholarship auditorium. Holloway adjourned without a ruling. In the hallway afterward, she said nothing to anyone. That was the part Clara had not prepared for. Not the anger, not the argument. The silence, the particular efficiency of it. The silence of someone who has already decided what happens next and sees no reason to announce it. Outside, the campus went on as it always did. Students crossing the quad, a groundskeeper with a leaf blower. A world that did not know anything had shifted. Clara walked back to her dormitory and ate half a granola bar standing at the window. Somewhere across the city, Holloway was sitting down at her desk, and whatever she typed in the next hour would take everything Clara had built since October and dismantle it before morning. The email went out at 2:17 in the morning. Sent from Clara's account. Subject line: correction to previously submitted work. Distribution: department chair, dean's office, the full student affairs listserv. The body admitted, in first person, in Clara's voice, in the careful, resigned language of someone who has read enough disciplinary files to understand the pattern. That the methodology in her scholarship application had been derived from a source she had not properly cited. Clara was in a 24-hour diner 2 miles from campus when she found out. A student at the counter was talking on the phone and mentioned the name, Clara Bennett. Clara opened her laptop. She read it twice. She did not recognize a single sentence. The suspension notice was on her student portal by the time she reached campus. Holloway had filed within 2 hours of the email going out. Scholarship revoked. Library work study terminated. Enrollment status flagged pending review. Dormitory housing, contingent on active enrollment, was under review, meaning she had 72 hours to vacate. She packed in 40 minutes. She did not own much. Before she left, she went to the main floor of the library. Holloway had filed a departmental request to inspect all borrowed materials associated with Clara's account. Filed 20 minutes before the email had been sent. Gerald, the overnight circulation supervisor who had let Clara stay past closing twice a week for 2 years, stood behind the counter with both hands flat on the surface. "I'm sorry," he said. "I tried to reach you." "I know." She asked for the personal item she had checked in for safekeeping 3 weeks prior, the notebook. Gerald looked at his screen for a long time. He brought out a sealed evidence bag. 1 page, brown at the edges, half the text gone. The corner had burned completely. The corner where her mother always wrote the date and the section heading. The rest of the notebook was ash. She stood at the circulation desk and looked at 1 page of her mother's handwriting through the plastic. The visible layer, the decoy, nothing that could prove anything on its own. Clara. She picked up her bag, checked the zipper twice. The 3rd time, she stopped checking it. "It's all right," she said. She left through the side door. Outside. November. A bus stop 2 blocks from campus. She sat on the bench with her bag on her lap and looked at the street. A bus passed. A woman with a stroller moved through the crosswalk without looking up. Somewhere down the block, a delivery worker on a bicycle was navigating around a parked truck. She had worked for this for 9 years. She thought about that number. 9. She had been 12 when her mother died, and 21 now. More than a third of her life spent moving carefully toward this one specific room, this one specific moment, carrying something that no longer existed on paper. She thought about whether Ethan had known this was coming, whether the alliance had been a calculation, whether she had been a resource that had served its purpose. She sat with that for a while. 20 minutes. The delivery cyclist slowed at the bus stop. Not the same one from before. This one was carrying a sealed envelope with no return address, moving with the specific patience of someone paid to deliver things without asking about them. Inside the envelope, a small external drive. A folded sheet of paper. On the paper, one notation. A symbol from page 43 of her mother's notebook. Hidden layer. The notation she had described to no one, never written anywhere outside the original, never photographed, never spoken aloud in any room she had shared with another person. She held the drive. Her hand was still. Ethan had not quit. He could not have known the symbol from the server files alone. Those contained the model, not the notation system Eleanor had used in the hidden layer. He had gone further, found something else she had not known existed. And he had sent it in a way that only she would understand. She put the drive in her coat pocket and stood up. She walked to the public library 3 miles from campus and sat at a corner table near the back. She opened her laptop, worked until closing at 9, then moved to the 24-hour diner and worked until 4 in the morning, rebuilding from the drive everything she would need to carry into one final room. She did not eat. She did not notice. By the time she left the diner, she had what she needed. By the time she walked home, she knew exactly what she was going to do. She had lost nearly everything. The notebook, the room, the position, the years. But the one thing Holloway had never fully understood was still intact, because no one had known how to find it. Now Clara was going to use it in front of everyone. And she was going to do it by hand. The annual Honors Assembly, main auditorium, second floor of the faculty building. 320 seats, every one of them filled. Holloway was scheduled to receive the Whitmore Distinguished Faculty Award. The certificate had been framed. 3 faculty members had submitted written endorsements. Clara had not been invited. She came in through the ground floor side entrance, up the service stairs, through the door to the left of the stage, the one the AV team left unlocked on assembly days. She had learned this working Saturday event shifts in her second year. She carried a glass bottle of black ink and one partially burned page. Holloway was midway through her remarks when Clara stepped onto the stage. The girl in the red blazer stopped moving her pen. A faculty member in the 3rd row put one hand on the back of the chair in front of him. Holloway looked at Clara. "I'd like to say something. Even, not raised. This is a formal assembly, and you are not..." Clara crossed to the lectern, placed the glass ink bottle on the surface. No sound. She turned to the standing whiteboard, opened the bottle, dipped 2 fingers. She began to draw, not the equation Holloway had assigned her mother's. The complete structural model for predictive error correction in adaptive AI systems. Every component, every node, every notation Eleanor Bennett had developed across 18 months in a graduate cubicle with bad lighting and an advisor who kept asking her to make it smaller. Each stroke slow, deliberate, like returning something to the exact position it had been taken from. Marcus stopped moving in his seat. Dr. Shen set down his program. The board member near the university president reached into his breast pocket and put on his glasses without looking away from the board. Dr. Patricia Okafor gripped both armrests. Clara stepped back. She pointed to the central parameter, the one Holloway had changed when she adapted the model for her 2006 paper. The one making Ethan's system return the same error code at the same timestamp for 8 months. You could take the formula steady, but you did not understand how it worked. A beat. That is why the system failed at the same moment, every time. She looked directly at Holloway. Because you only copied it. She held the pause. My mother was the one who created it. The auditorium did not erupt. It went quiet. The kind that means something has just become permanent. Holloway had both hands on the lectern. Clara watched her make the calculation, the same one she had made in November 2003, when she had held up a piece of paper in front of a room of students and said one word. Whether she could still control this. From the right side entrance, Ethan Caldwell walked in. Behind him, a woman in a dark blazer carrying a thick document folder. They connected a portable projector to the wall screen in under 60 seconds. The screen displayed a cascade of time-stamped files, research logs from Whitmore's decommissioned server archive, recovered 4 days prior. Eleanor Bennett's name embedded in the authorship metadata of every foundational document in the sequence. Dated. Sourced. The woman in the dark blazer set the open folder in front of the board member with the glasses. He began reading without being asked. Okafor was on her feet. Holloway looked at the screen, at the folder, at Clara's drawing still wet on the board behind her. She stepped back from the lectern, both hands coming off the edge. Slowly, she did not speak. The silence was the result. Some rooms mark a moment by the sound they make. This one marked it by the sound it stopped making. The reinstatement took 11 days. On the 12th morning, she was back in the mathematics building. 3rd floor, east-facing window. A card holder on the door with a paper placard inside. Her name, standard font, standard size, printed by whoever happened to be at the administrative desk. She stood in the doorway and looked at it for a full minute. The faculty committee motion to rename the Whitmore Excellence Award passed in 3 days. Okafor had not waited for a vote. She had proposed it directly. The Eleanor Bennett Prize in Applied Mathematics. Clara had not asked for that. She sat in Okafor's office when she was told, both hands on the chair arms, looking at the desk, the coffee ring, the stack of student papers, a small framed photograph. Your mother should have had this 20 years ago, Okafor said. Yes, Clara said. She started the scholarship fund that same semester. A modest pool managed through the financial aid office, open to students whose submitted work had been flagged, questioned, or returned without full review. She named it 2 words. For looking. She kept her Tuesday and Thursday evenings in the basement library. On a Tuesday in November, a first-year student named Priya sat 2 carols down, staring at a problem set with the fixed expression of someone 3 hours deep with nothing to show for it. Clara did not look up. It is not the equation, she said. Start from the assumption. Check whether it holds. Priya looked at her paper, then at Clara. How did you know which line I was on? You have been on line 3 for 45 minutes. Priya looked at line 3. Oh, she said. 3 seconds. Oh. Don't be afraid to be seen, Clara said. Not even here. Priya moved to line 4. A sound at the bottom of the stairs. Clara did not look up. The light in here is still terrible, Ethan said. I know. He sat at the far end of the row, same carol as the first night, bag down, unopened. I spent 6 years looking for someone who could actually see what the system needed, he said. Not optimize the surface. Read what the structure was trying to do underneath. You were looking in the wrong places. Probably. He picked up her glasses case from the desk, looked at the taped hinge, set it back exactly where it had been. Clara. She looked up. He reached across and touched the side of her face, slowly, without hurry, a thin line of ink still there from the assembly. She had not known it was there. From now on, he said quietly, you do not have to be invisible anymore. The fluorescent tube above them flickered, still broken. Same flicker as September. Same tube she had sat under every night alone. 2 carols down, Priya moved to line 5. And in the basement of Whitmore's main library, under a light no one had ever bothered to fix, 2 people sat together in a stillness that needed nothing added to it. Not an ending, but the first sentence of something neither of them had words for yet. Some things get taken, not misplaced, not lost. Taken. Quietly. By people who knew just enough to recognize the value, but not enough to understand what it actually was. Eleanor Bennett spent 18 months building something true. She spent 20 years being invisible. Her daughter spent 9 years carrying what was left. And in the end, the work survived. Not because it was protected, because it was real. And real things leave a record, even when the pages are burned, even when the name is erased. The record stays. If you have ever carried someone else's unfinished work inside your chest and kept walking anyway, this story was for you. Leave a comment below. Tell us who helped you stop disappearing, and if this reached something real in you tonight. Share it with someone who needs to hear it.